Thank you, all members of the Liberty International World Conference Board of Directors, Gabriel Caprav, for suggesting me as a speaker in this wonderful meeting, and the team and sponsors that makes this event possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to dedicate these words to my father and my grandfather that committed their entire lives to the noble cause of liberty, and to my dear friend and president of Argentina, Javier Milei. Javier is steering our nation away from the road to serfdom and towards the pathways of freedom. He has undertaken this mission with profound conviction, discipline, far-reaching execution, and the courage required to confront the dark interests of those who for over a century lived at the expense of all hardworking people. It's a profound honor to address you today from this stage in this iconic state of Texas, a place whose founding and struggle for independence offer an exemplary narrative of freedom. The blood of the heroes of the Alamo, who paved the way to the victory at San Jacinto and independence achieved in May 1836, is a part of a great history built under the relentless spirit in search for freedom and the right to life, liberty, and property. This remarkable legacy, along with countless others throughout the free world, compels us to embrace our moral responsibility to carry forward this vital work that must never be abandoned. Our daily fight never ends, because there will always be people who want to live at the expense of others. Therefore, it's necessary for each one of us to take the commitment of preparing ourselves in the study of the foundations on which a free society is based in order to engage in daily debate, since the Chavez, the Maduros, the Castros do not appear overnight, but are always just around the corner. It is also an honor and a privilege for me to stand on American soil, a land whose libertarian origins have served as a beacon of hope for all those who cherish goodwill. In a world where state advocates are many, we must not back down even in the smallest details, because those details are a big part of the essentials. For example, the defense of language is critical to preserving the clarity of thought and the integrity of communication. We are currently witnessing a form of semantic subversion promoted by socialism. A tactic that, although it might seem laughably absurd at first glance, harbors a deeply corrosive agenda. What appears as a simple distortion of words is in fact a deliberate strategy designed to erode the foundations of communication, diminish understanding, and the development of a civilized society. Socialism, having failed both in its philosophical argument and its empirical demonstration, now returns in disguise, cloaked in slogans calling for change. But it's the same collectivist agenda, repackaged, with renewed efforts to undermine individual rights, equality before the law, and the principles of freedom. The very same policies that led to the impoverishing results in the past. And with regard with semantics, it's worth remembering that socialists call themselves progressives, when at the end of the day, those ideas, far from leading to progress, economic growth, and the improvement of quality and life expectancy, led to food rationing, misery, even gulags, and the massacre of 150 million human beings. One of the new disguises under which socialism seeks to conceal itself is through postmodern feminism. Under these banners, promotes attacks on private property through enforced quotas, advocates for wage equality in the labor market, and demands a long list of privileges under the claim of gender equality. These claims, however, not only infringe upon the rights of others, but also insults and underestimate the talents of women. The underlying implication is that women, on their own merit, are somehow incapable of achieving success without special treatment. It's ridiculous, offensive, and degrading. The common cry for equal opportunities, as it often is framed today, is misleading. It becomes a demand to unjustly strip others of the property or freedom under the false claim of fairness. Unfortunately, many companies, without any legal mandate, are voluntarily adopting such absurd policies. In doing so, they've begun a self-destructive race, implementing irrational policies to prioritize superficial diversity over genuine talent and competency. Hiring candidate processes become absurd spectacles, where decisions are increasingly based on whether someone possesses a penis or a vagina, or whether they identify as a part of a particular minority group. Those who are quicker to recognize the new talent pool entering the market will have an advantage over those who hold on to outdated views. In a truly free market, without government intervention, the mechanisms of supply and demand naturally present opportunities for participants to efficiently allocate scarce resources in response to society's boundless needs. The invisible hand of the market, when left alone, continuously brings forth solution in this perpetual economic challenge. Now let's turn our attention to the debate on gender-based violence. This phrase, while often used with the best of intentions, invites a critical question. Should we not condemn all forms of violence, irrespective of the victim's gender? This movement might become so clear when it rejects the inclusive idea, only considers the case when the victims belong to a particular political or social group. Here's the thing. Any pursuit of forced egalitarianism, attempting to equalize outcomes, inevitably threatens the foundational and democratic principle of legal equality. Such efforts will always infringe upon someone's natural rights, and they distort the justice system into a tool of imposing preferential treatment rather than safeguarding universal fairness. I want to share with you a quote of Pope Leo XIII from the encyclical Rerum Novarum, fantastic, about equality. He articulates the inherent danger of redistributionist policies. To quote him directly, the doors would be thrown open to envy, to mutual invective, and to discord. The sources of wealth themselves would run dry, for no one would have any interest in exerting his talent or his industry. And that ideal equality about which they entertain pleasant dreams would be, in reality, the leveling down of all to a like condition of misery and degradation. Hence, it is clear that the main tenet of socialism, community of goods, must be utterly rejected, since it injures those whom it would seem meant to benefit. It's directly contrary to the natural rights of mankind and would introduce confusion and disorder. The first and most fundamental principle, therefore, if one would undertake to alleviate the condition of the masses, must be the inviolability of private property. And the quote follows, "It is impossible to reduce civil society to one dead level. Socialists may in that intent do their utmost, but all striving against nature is in vain. There naturally exist among mankind manifold differences of the most important kind. People differ in capacity, skills, health, strength, and an equal fortune is a necessary result of an equal condition. Such an equality is far from being disadvantageous, either to individuals or to the community. Social and public life can only be maintained by means of various kinds of capacity for business and the planning of many parts. And each man, as a rule, chooses the part which suits his own peculiar domestic condition." Unquote. Now, the most dangerous weapon, as I see it, of radical feminism has championed what can only be described as murder of innocence in the very womb. The term abortion is misleading because it suggests the termination of something that doesn't exist yet. We abort a plane landing. We abort a military operation, not a human life that is already in development. In this light, it's fitting to bring up the Texas Heartbeat Act, which has ignited an intense debate here. From my perspective, while the Heartbeat Act is intended as a defense of life, it ultimately falls short and even presents dangers. The law relies on the detection of cardiac activity to define the onset of legal protection. But the presence of a heartbeat does not and should not serve as a definitive marker of when life begins. This narrow criterion leaves countless human lives vulnerable, and many preborn children who have not yet developed a detectable heartbeat remain without legal recognition or protection, and leaves many lives tragically exposed to harm. It is a scientific fact that life begins at conception, so protecting life only after the detection of a heartbeat, it's a legal abomination. The assault on individual rights by radical feminism is also evident in the alarming scandalization of youth and the insidious degradation of minors. This is exemplified by the promotion of disturbing protocols involving the use of puberty blockers and the medicalization of children in opposition to the inherent sexual nature. Such practices are often implemented under conditions of stress and anguish, where vulnerable children are subjected to adult-induced questions regarding their biological sex. Feminism has also taken on the task of perpetuating the fantasy of a seemingly infinite array of sexual categories that no one understands, but has managed to get stupid people or those afraid of offending someone to incorporate it and consider it as a social agreement. Just as I advocate for respect towards individuals, no one can compel me or anyone else to engage with or adopt the self-perception of those who choose, for any reason, to deviate from their biological reality. I firmly believe that individuals should have the freedom to marry someone of the same sex, to form consensual relationships involving multiple partners, or for a man to choose to dress as a woman and request to be called Dorothy. However, with the same freedom, the rest of us retain the right to either embrace or reject those lifestyles without the initial group demanding tolerance while simultaneously practicing intolerance toward different perspectives. The environmental issue that serves like another Trojan horse for socialism, deftly exploiting fear and guilt to further its anti-capitalist and anti-industrial agenda. The question arises, what should we do about capitalism and its carbon emissions? The rampant deforestation, the depletion of the ozone layer, and the tragic global warming? I find this topic both compelling and complex, and assure you that I've explored both sides of the debate extensively. My skepticism was particularly piqued by initiatives such as the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, along with witnessing scientists signing declarations about what constitute accepted truths and what topics are deemed off limit for discussion. I question myself, isn't doubt the most valuable asset of a scientist? What is this insistence on populist truth or divine enlightenment dispensed by these modern-day cardinals of New Inquisition? Undoubtedly, scientists are compensated to address problems and seek solutions, right? However, while scientific research has undeniably brought about welfare, progress, and improved life expectancy, it is also true that there are those who seem motivated to propagate fictitious crises in order to secure funding for so-called green solutions. Significant sums of money provided by taxpayers. The funding and dominance of the mainstream narratives of fake environmental activism through media coverage have been nothing short of overwhelming. A prime example is the documentary with scientific pretension and inconvenient truth. Remember that? That earned its author, Al Gore, a Nobel Peace Prize, despite the film embodying one of the most outrageous frauds imaginable. This bold and poorly constructed documentary was taken seriously, despite its use of bias and selective graphs that presented climate data in a misleading manner. If we were to believe Gore's simplistic linear projections, Manhattan should be completely underwater by now, along with much of the Florida Peninsula. His ocean levels projections were an astonishing 17 times higher than those predicted by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an organization that, by the way, actively promotes the 2030 agenda. In reality, the data from the last century indicates that global temperatures have risen by less than 0.80 degrees. We must not overlook historical references that reveal that climate has always oscillated between periods of cooling and warming. A well-known entertainer in Argentina coined the phrase, "the public renews itself," in reference at the enduring success of the same artistic proposal. This phrase can be applied to the climate alarmists' success throughout history, because our memory has been painfully short. You see, at the beginning of last century, alarmists warned us about disasters due to global cooling. A decade later, they sounded the alarm about looming cataclysms from global warming. In the 70s, they responsibly declared that we were entering a new ice age, foretelling unprecedented misfortunes for humanity. Now, these same fear-mongering tactics are being used now to harass new generations and divert resources under the pretense of protecting them from unfunded catastrophes attributed to global warming. This includes absurd legislation like taxing cattle owners for the flatulences of their cows based on the weight of their livestock, as well as banning chlorofluorocarbons, the CFC, a gas that at the time was crucial for the low cost and safe storage and transportation of food and medicines, vital for the undeveloped countries to participate in the global market. These repeated cycles of alarmism highlight the need for a more balanced and rational approach on environmental issues, free from sensationalism and grounded in factual evidence. It is essential that we critically examine these repeated cycles of alarmism that's been pushed by those who want to benefit from other people's fear and urgency. On the other hand, numerous respected scientists argue that global warming primarily stems from carbon dioxide emissions resulting from solar activity and natural processes of the Earth, factors that, as you may know, lie beyond human control. Fred Singer from the University of Virginia asserts that the ozone layer has decreased by approximately 2 to 5%, a fact that has not generated significant implications, considering that the thickness and coverage have fluctuated over the decades and has only been understood since 1956. Furthermore, it is essential to highlight that carbon dioxide is a fundamental factor for life. We also must take into consideration the fact that carbon dioxide constitutes just 0.04% of our atmosphere, with only about 11% of that figure attributable to human emissions. So what are we truly discussing here? Billions of taxpayers' dollars are being mislocated from the productive system into what could be one of the greatest scams we've encountered. Dixie Lee Ray and Lou Gusso, in their work Trashing the Planet, note that the pollution generated by humanity over more than 200 years since the Industrial Revolution is roughly equivalent to the pollution produced by just 3 significant volcanic eruptions: Krakatoa in Indonesia in 1883, Katmai in Alaska, 1912, and Hekla in Iceland, 1947. In conclusion, many of the ideological constructs we confront serve as a mere pretext for interventionism and central planning. In Argentina, we've completed more than a century of socialist nightmare, a toxic recipe that attracts megalomaniacs, social engineers, and corrupted businessmen, corrupted politicians, corrupted journalists, and corrupted union leaders. The United States, once the last bastion of freedom, it's been under assault on many of the principles upon which its founding fathers built and fought. This raises an important question. What do we want from our governments? If we desire a government that guides us through every step of our lives and seeks to make us happy, well, we must be prepared to give up our liberties, our rights, and work our butts off in a human farm to pay politicians high life and privileges, since traditional politicians do not expend their own money to fulfill the few promises they manage to keep. Let us remember the wise words of the great Ronald Reagan. Government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem. The sentiment underscored the need for vigilance against government's overreach and a critical examination of the role of government in our lives. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I hope seeing you all next year in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, for the meeting to 2025 in August. Thank you.